Shirley had always been known for her tireless dedication to work and her genuine care for others. As a doctor in a large city hospital, she spent most of her days attending to patients and supporting her team. Her warm smile and compassionate nature made her beloved by everyone around her. That Thursday morning, Shirley was focused on analysing some tests in her office when she heard urgent knocks on the door. A nurse rushed in with a worried expression. "Dr. Shirley, someone is not feeling well in the cafeteria, and you are being urgently called," exclaimed the nurse. Without hesitation, Shirley grabbed her stethoscope and hurried towards the staff cafeteria. Her mind was already working on the possible emergencies she might encounter. Upon opening the door, however, she was met with a completely different scene. "Surprise!" her colleagues shouted. The cafeteria was decorated with colourful balloons and a banner wishing her a happy birthday. Shirley was dumbfounded, unsure of how to react. She rarely spoke about her personal life at work and couldn't even remember mentioning her birthday. "I can't believe you found out my birthday," Shirley said, feeling her face flush. "There was no need for a party, thank you guys. You really caught me by surprise." One of the nurses approached with a cake in her hands. "Doctor, you always make a point of giving gifts to everyone. Always bring snacks for the team. You're always concerned about everyone. It's the least we could do." Shirley felt her eyes fill with tears at the affectionate gesture from her colleagues. She never expected recognition for her actions, but realised how cherished she was by everyone there. The impromptu party included her co-workers' presents, complete with cake, soda, and many warm hugs. Back at work, Shirley felt light and happy. The morning's surprise had made her day more special. That night, her family had also prepared a celebration at her parents' house. When Shirley arrived, she found the room decorated and a table laden with her favourite dishes. While greeting the family members present, Shirley noticed her Aunt Jane, a lady of approximately 70 years, accompanied by a gentleman she didn't know. Intrigued, she called her younger sister Laura aside. "Laura, who is that gentleman with Aunt Jane?" Shirley asked in a low voice. Laura giggled before answering. "That's Aunt Jane's new boyfriend. You're the only one who doesn't know. The whole family is talking about it." Shirley widened her eyes in surprise. "It can't be, Laura. It's not even been 6 months since she became a widow. Where did she find this boyfriend?" "It was on a dating app," Laura replied with a cheeky smile. "By the way, you should give it a try. How long has it been since you've been on a date with someone, Shirley?" Shirley laughed, shaking her head. "A date? Only if it's with a patient. You know I barely leave the hospital." The two sisters laughed together, and Laura insisted once more that Shirley should try a dating app. Shirley deflected, but the idea lingered in her mind. The rest of the evening was pleasant, with Shirley enjoying the company of her family. She watched her Aunt Jane exchanging affection with her new boyfriend and couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. Driving back home, she laughed to herself, remembering how her elderly aunt had found a boyfriend while she remained single. "Who would have thought Aunt Jane would be bolder than me in that department?" she thought, amused by the unusual situation. The next day, which was her day off, Shirley decided to take the opportunity to organise her bookshelf and rummage through some old boxes. Sitting on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by objects that brought back memories, she found herself thinking about the conversation with her sister Laura about the dating app. "Should I really try?" she murmured to herself. Driven by curiosity, Shirley picked up her phone and downloaded one of the most popular apps. With some hesitation, she began filling out her profile. Name, age, profession. When it came to the photo part, she hesitated. She decided to use a recent, unfiltered image, thinking it was better to be authentic from the start. After completing her profile, Shirley began to explore the app. She spent a few minutes swiping through the profiles that appeared on the screen. A few minutes later, a new message alert popped up in the corner of the screen. With her heart racing, Shirley opened the message. It was from a man named Adrian. His profile picture only showed his back against a sunset, which intrigued Shirley. Was I naive to use my real photo? She questioned herself. The conversation with Adrian flowed for some time, but Shirley couldn't get very excited. His responses were short and somewhat generic. Even so, she decided to give him a chance, thinking that maybe he just wasn't good at expressing himself in writing. After a few message exchanges, Adrian invited her to lunch the next day. Shirley hesitated for a moment, but ended up accepting. After all, it was just lunch, and she could take advantage of her break at work for it. They agreed to meet at a restaurant near the hospital where she worked. Adrian said he would be wearing a green shirt to make it easier to identify him. The next morning, Shirley got ready with a little more care than usual. She chose a simple but elegant dress, suitable for work and a casual lunch. Arriving at the restaurant at the agreed time, she looked for someone wearing a green shirt. The place was crowded, mostly with hospital professionals wearing their white coats. Amid the crowd, Shirley spotted a man sitting alone, wearing a green shirt. He had his back to her, just like in his profile picture. Confident she had found her match, she approached. "Hello, I'm Shirley. It's a pleasure to meet you. I hope you haven't been waiting long," she said, extending her hand. The man looked at her with a confused expression. "Hi, pleasure to meet you. I've never been here before, so I'm not quite sure how it works and—" Shirley found the man's reaction a bit strange, but attributed it to first date nerves. She sat down and tried to move the situation forward. "Shall we order something to eat? The salmon with orange sauce here is great," she suggested, sitting down. "In fact, I've already ordered," the man replied, looking even more uncomfortable. At that moment, Shirley began to feel that she had made a big mistake. The man didn't stand up when she arrived, didn't pull out her chair and had already ordered. What kind of date was this? As she tried to understand the situation, the man's dish arrived and he started eating, to Shirley's total surprise. She felt her face burn with anger. "You know, Adrian, I think we didn't start off well on this date. It's okay. It was an attempt, wasn't it? And—" Shirley began to say, trying to find a graceful exit from that awkward situation. "Adrian? My name is not Adrian," the man interrupted. Shirley stood up, confused and a little irritated. "But you are wearing a green shirt and—" At that moment, she saw another man entering the restaurant, also wearing a green shirt. He looked around and upon seeing Shirley, smiled and approached. "Shirley? I am Adrian," said the newcomer, recognizing her from the profile picture. Shirley felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. She had sat at the wrong table and started a conversation with a complete stranger. Murmuring hurried apologies to the confused man at the table, she headed over to the real Adrian, feeling completely mortified. Adrian and Shirley sat at another table, and the lunch finally began. However, as the conversation progressed, Shirley realized that she and Adrian had nothing in common. Their lifestyles, interests and personalities seemed completely opposite, and not in a complimentary way, but in a manner that distanced them even further. Adrian talked non-stop about himself, his hobbies and professional achievements, barely giving Shirley space to express herself. When she managed to say something, he seemed disinterested, quickly returning to talk about himself. Shirley found herself repeatedly casting furtive glances at the table of the man she had mistaken for Adrian, feeling a mix of embarrassment and irritation. Realizing that the lunch was going from bad to worse, Shirley decided to end the meeting earlier than planned. "Adrian, it was a pleasure meeting you, but I need to get back to work. I have patients waiting for me," she said, forcing a polite smile. Adrian seemed surprised at the abrupt end of the meeting, but he did not protest. They said their goodbyes politely, and Shirley left the restaurant feeling a mixture of relief and frustration. That lunch had been a complete disaster, first sitting at the wrong table and then the exhausting minutes with Adrian. As she walked back to the hospital, Shirley couldn't help but laugh at herself. "I will never listen to Laura's advice again," she thought, with a smile on the corner of her mouth. The experience had been embarrassing, but at least it would make for a funny story to tell later. When she arrived back at the hospital, Shirley was greeted by a buzz among the nurses. Apparently, a new doctor had been hired to replace one who had retired. The comments were that he was very handsome and polite. Shirley, always friendly and welcoming, decided to greet the new colleague. She approached his office and knocked on the door. When the door opened, her eyes could hardly believe what they saw. The new co-worker was the same man from the restaurant, the one at the wrong table. "You are the new doctor?" Shirley stammered, feeling her face flush with embarrassment. "Yes, my name is Jonathan. And if I remember correctly, your name is Shirley, right?" he replied with a kind smile. Yes, that's my name. Sorry to interrupt, I just came to welcome you and—" "Goodbye," Shirley said, leaving the office hurriedly. Back in her own office, Shirley couldn't believe the coincidence. She would have as a colleague the man with whom she had experienced one of the most embarrassing moments of her adult life. In the days that followed, she did her best to avoid Jonathan, altering her routes around the hospital and even stopping frequenting the restaurant where the incident had occurred. About 2 weeks after the incident, Shirley was in the hospital parking lot, ready to leave after her shift. As she approached her car, she noticed Jonathan standing there, apparently waiting for her. "Is it just me, or have you been avoiding me?" he asked with a gentle tone of voice. Shirley felt her face flush. "No, it's just that. Actually, I have," she admitted, unable to deny the obvious. Jonathan smiled, a warm smile that made Shirley feel a slight flutter in her stomach. "Well, I guess we met in an unusual way, didn't we? How about we fix that and you let me invite you to dinner? This time I promise you won't sit at the wrong table." Shirley hesitated for a moment, but something in Jonathan's gaze made her reconsider. There was a kindness and humour in his eyes that intrigued her. "All right," she finally replied, surprised by her own boldness. "But I'll choose the restaurant." Jonathan laughed, nodding in agreement. They exchanged phone numbers and arranged the details for the dinner the next day. The next day, Shirley carefully got ready for dinner. She chose a cosy restaurant, not too formal, but with a pleasant atmosphere. Upon arriving, she found Jonathan already waiting for her at the entrance. "Good evening, Shirley," he greeted her with a warm smile. "I promise I won't start eating before you this time." Shirley laughed, immediately feeling more relaxed. The dinner flowed surprisingly pleasantly. Jonathan was attentive and a great listener, very different from the initial impression Shirley had of him. They discovered they had a lot in common, from musical tastes to lifestyles. As the night progressed, Shirley found herself laughing more than she had in a long time. Jonathan had an intelligent and gentle sense of humour, and she felt increasingly comfortable in his company. At the end of the night, as they walked together to the parking lot, Jonathan stopped and looked at Shirley with a serious but warm expression. "You know, Shirley, I am very happy that you sat at my table that day, even if it was by mistake," he said, gently holding her hand. Shirley felt her heart race. "I'm happy too, Jonathan. Who would have thought that such an embarrassing mistake could lead to something so pleasant?" They said goodbye with the promise of meeting again soon. As she drove home, Shirley couldn't stop smiling. She thought about how life could be unpredictable and wonderful at the same time. In the months that followed, Shirley and Jonathan grew closer and closer. What started as an embarrassing misunderstanding turned into a beautiful love story. They complemented each other in a way Shirley had never experienced before. A year after that fateful day at the restaurant, Shirley and Jonathan returned to the same place for a special celebration. Sitting at the same table where it all began, they laughed, reminiscing about the incident. "Who would have thought that the love of my life would be sitting at the wrong table?" said Shirley, her eyes shining with happiness. Jonathan held her hand across the table. "Sometimes what seems like a big mistake turns out to be the greatest right of our lives," he replied, before leaning in for a gentle kiss. At that moment, Shirley understood that sometimes destiny has a peculiar sense of humour. What seemed to be the most embarrassing day of her life had turned into the beginning of her greatest happiness, and she couldn't have been more grateful for having sat at the wrong table that day. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, Watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.